Hey legends, it's Aqua and we are taking a journey to customize this gorgeous draft resin. He's named after Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea, and he certainly looks like he could command storms and earthquakes. The design of this guy is a dappled silver black. He's also going to have some pretty unique face markings, but before we begin painting, we need to do a little repair. The owner of this guy had informed me he needed a little help with his right ear, so I take some epoxy sculpt, parts A and B, and mix them together before applying a small amount to the top of his ear. Being only the tip, there's no real need for wire. If I had to replace the whole ear, I would have added a thick wire for support, but because it's only the tip, I place the epoxy and use my rubber clay shaper tool to make any adjustments and smooth everything down. His ears do also have some herring details, so I added a little bit to the top so it looked seamless. When the epoxy cured, I added a quick layer of primer to the top of his head, but clearly just decided to add a layer of primer to the entire model, because why not? After a bit of prepping, I gave him a couple coats of white primer, and now he's ready for painting. Our next step is dapples, and in all honesty, this can be the most daunting and frustrating part of the process, but also it can be the most rewarding. Everyone has their own style, and I'm definitely still learning how to do more realistic dapples, but at the moment, I just apply pastel in layers, starting with the lightest and then working my way through to the darkest shades. I use a kneaded eraser to remove the pastel in star-like motions or as very rough kind of spots, to make it seem just a little bit more realistic. And as you add layers, it becomes more natural. I think I did 3 to 4 layers of pastel to achieve the color I needed. You just have to be patient and work carefully. And in between each layer, I always use my Tester's dull coat to spray in between, just to make sure it's sealed, and then I let it dry before moving on to the next layer. I also do one side at a time just to avoid getting fingerprints on the body and ruining the pastel altogether. Once I've added enough layers and I'm happy, I move on to airbrushing. For the first layer of paint, I mix burnt umber and fawn. This blend was surprisingly close to the darker shade of pastel on Poseidon already, so I was pretty impressed that I was able to match it. But basically, my unorthodox method is just using watered down Joe Sanja acrylics and putting them straight into my airbrush. It's not great, I would not recommend, but old habits die hard. I've been doing this since I got my first airbrush in 2019, so it's done the job, but I seriously need to look into something better. It does give me grief every now and then, so you can imagine my pain. This stage is literally just me going in with the airbrush to fill in the remaining color to his face, back, and legs. I do also fill in the neck and work on any extra muscle shading. Next we move on to the markings. His face marking is really cool and quite different. I take some titanium white and add a dollop of water from my brush, mixing it in to get a milky consistency before mapping out the markings. Once I've got the markings set in place, I continue to add layers until I'm happy with the opacity. I also work on the feathers, making sure to add as much detail as possible until everything is nice and opaque. did add some pinking to the nose and some shading to his feathers before moving on to his eyes. The owner wanted some very light colored beige kind of eyes, and I tried my best to match what was given. I think they turned out pretty nice. They turned out pretty good. Chestnuts were also painted on before I switched to adding in his mane and tail. And personally, I'm not a huge fan of silver manes and tails, but that's because it takes a bucket load more layers to fill them in compared to darker manes and tails. To each their own, is all I'm gonna say. The last little bit is glossing his eyes and nostrils. I did paint his hooves as well, but didn't get any footage of that. After that, I sealed him in Tester's dull coat and signed him on the bottom, and now he's all done. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. If you're feeling bold, you can also check out my Instagram at aqua.models for more content, and I will see you all in my next video. Stay legendary. Alive, alive, alive.